Yo, what's up everyone? I just want to upload this video as an updated version to the first DIY cable video I uploaded to my channel. If y'all didn't catch it, TAOtypes actually built a cable kit I gave him a really long time ago. And thinking that my first DIY cable video was the only resource I had for reference, I thought it'd be a good idea to upload a new version of it to show the process off a little more clearly than I did before. I'll also be working on an infographic type of page and link it to this video once it's ready. If you want to see more DIY custom cable content like this, hit that subscribe button, thumbs up the video, and feel free to leave a comment with ideas for stuff you want to see in the future. With that being said, let's hear a brief word of inspiration and get started with this video.
I built a cable, that means you can build one too.
Alright, so if y'all didn't know already, I actually opened up my DIY cable parts store. So if you want to check that out, I'll have that linked in the description below. But today I'll also be using parts that are available there. So what I have here should be enough to build a 3-foot cable double sleeved with USB-A to USB-C. But anyways, I have in here a cool sticker. I have some white heat shrink, some Haichu, super important. I have about, I think this is 3 feet of paracord, some white tech flex here, and then I have my USB-A and USB-C connectors in here. And I have my actual USB 2.0 cable. Before we get started, I'm actually going to show off some tools I'm using. These tools are not available in the store, but I'll provide links in the description about places where you can buy them, specifically Amazon links. Anyways, I use a pair of helping hands. If you don't have one of these, you kind of like jerry rig a solution with tape or something. But these are only like $7 to $8, and if you want to make more cables in the future, I highly recommend having one of these, as these are super useful. I have a pair of micro cutters, which is good just to like cut around sleeving and whatnot, just in case. I have a pair of tweezers. Any tweezers will do, but I have my field tested full fade tweezers here. What else do I have? I have a pair of needle nose pliers. I got these from Daiso, but there's a bunch on Amazon that you can use as well. And I think more importantly, I have a pair of wire strippers. Make sure that they have a 28 gauge option on it. And these will be really important to make sure that you get the sleeving off of your specific wires. Other than that, I have a heat gun, and I have also of course, a soldering iron, some solder, and also an air vent just to make sure everything is done safely and well. But yeah, that kind of goes over the tools, and now let's go into the sleeving process first. Alright, so let's start with sleeving. So what we're going to need here is we're going to use the paracord and the cable. So let's put the other stuff to the side. And let's undo our cable tie here. And our little zip tie on the paracord. So from here, typically the paracord is heated on each end to prevent fraying. So what I will probably need to do is actually cut a little of it off. So I'm going to grab a pair of scissors actually. And I'm just going to snip this off real quick. There we go. Because sometimes if it's heated, the threads will actually stick to the actual paracord itself, and you won't be able to take these inner strands out, which we will need to do to make sure that we can use that sleeving for our cable. So to remove the actual inner strands, I'm going to push the outer part of the paracord back, and I should be able to expose the strands here. And I should be able to pull this out and kind of just take it out and undo it from the inside of the paracord. Make sure to be careful with this, because this could snag inside and could kind of deform your paracord. It shouldn't make too much of a difference if you're using TechFlex over it, but just to keep your paracord in the best shape possible, I recommend taking your time kind of doing this. So here we go. This has all of its strands removed, and then from there we can take our cable and find a spot for us to enter or to start sleeving the paracord over the cable. So we're going to take this end. Any end should work. This is really a part that people get fairly frustrated in doing. But what you want to do is kind of like if you ever use like a Chinese finger trap, it's kind of a process where you want to push it in kind of gently and make sure you do it smoothly so it doesn't snag on the different edge here, as there's only a small margin of kind of space between the paracord and the cable. So you take your time, be gentle, and allow it to smoothly go inside, or smoothly allow the cable go inside of the paracord. Some things that I do here is see the cables at this point right here. What I like to do is I push the non-sleeved portion of it in and then pull it back here. And from there, I incrementally am able to sleeve it without it snagging. A lot of people end up doing this like very aggressively, and it ends up ruining kind of the sleeving, and sometimes it actually gets stuck on the cable itself. So really take your time. I think this is something that takes a lot of practice, but it's kind of enjoyable. Like I find it kind of like, I always thought about cable making as like knitting. So it's kind of a chill time just to, you know, sleeve cables and make sure that it is in properly and it comes in smoothly. So I'm about halfway there right now. I can kind of pick up the process here and speed up once you feel comfortable and it's going smoothly for you. If you feel like it's snagging, you can feel free to like kind of pull it back a little and try again to make sure you have a good entry point there. And also you might want to remove some slack from the part that's already completed, just so you have more leeway for you to add more of your paracord onto the cable. Alright, so we have about a foot left here. This is quite the fun process, but it is definitely something you have to do to get this initial sleeving on. Alright, so we're almost there. So once I finish sleeving this paracord on, I'm actually going to leave like about 1 inch of bare wire for us to use for the soldering and stripping later. So here we have about 1 inch, maybe a little more. I'm going to pull this back and kind of remove any slack that's here. And from there, I'm going to do about the same length on the other side and grab my wire cutter and just cut off the excess wire. Here we go. Boom. All right, so there you go. Now we have a paracord sleeved cable. All right, now that we have our paracord on the cable, now we're gonna double sleeve it with TechFlex. So what I'm actually gonna do is use a lighter. Technically, you can use your soldering iron for this, but I'm actually gonna heat one of these ends to make sure that it doesn't slip while I double sleeve it with TechFlex. So what I do is heat it a little here, and as it melts, I will squeeze it and it will kind of stick to the cable itself. There we go. Typically, this is kind of hidden with heat shrink afterwards, but make sure you don't burn too much of your paracord, of course. So yeah, let's grab our TechFlex here. I'm using white for this build today. We're gonna take this off. And then we're gonna do this, basically the same process as what we did for the paracord to the cable. But I will say that it's a little easier to work with TechFlex as it does stretch more. So we're gonna start with the part that I initially burned and stuck to the cable. And from there, I will be sleeving it with the TechFlex. Technically, you can like reheat the ends of this TechFlex to prevent fraying, but in this case, I feel like I'm gonna have excess and cut it anyways. But that's definitely a good process to do as well. So if you see here, this is much faster than it was for the paracord, and usually people find this process a little easier to do. Also, like, you don't need to double sleeve your cables. I mean, technically it'll work either way. It's more of just an aesthetic, right? But some cables I've done in the past, I've just used like TechFlex, and they turn out as good cables as well. And it's kind of all preference there. So specifically with like, if you want to do like a thicker wire or thicker cable, or maybe like some audio cables, definitely sometimes you may only be able to find TechFlex that fits as sleeving. So kind of try things out and see what works for you and what your objective is for your build. All right, so I think that should be it. That's about it. So yeah, here we go. So now we have our double sleeve cable. All right, so now that we have our double sleeve cable, we're gonna go ahead and strip the cable. So first of all, we're gonna actually remove the outer jacket, and from there we'll expose the different wires to also strip as well. So to kind of do this, I kind of pull back a little of the sleeving here, and then I'll take my wire cutters and I'll slowly twist them around the cable to kind of get this outer jacket loose. So I'm gonna do that gently here. Make sure you don't cut through the cable itself, and you'll be able to expose the inner kind of shield wiring here. And from there, you can expose the 4-core wire here. Pretty simple, right? So let me do that on both sides first. Okay, pull this back a little. I'll go right here. Twist it all slowly and surely. Make sure you don't cut through the cable. And kind of be careful because you might actually nick the inside wires. And from there, you may it may be making contact with the shielding, and that could short out your cable. So just be careful and make sure to double check that none of your contacts are exposed to do that. All right, so here we have this, and we can take off our kind of shielding on this cable here. Sometimes you might be able to use pliers if this is like super tight, but typically it should come off fairly easily, as it does here. Cool. All right, so what we want to do is typically you might want to keep some of this drain wire here, and it's a good practice to wrap it around your housing. But I will take off some of this here for this example. So I'm just going to take my snippers, and I have a trash can under me, and I'll just go ahead and snip some of this here and take this off as well, and do the same on the other side. Cool. I'll go put this over down here. Perfect. You may have little like straggling like fibers here, but feel free to just take care of them so they don't get in the way later. All right, so there we have our stripped wire. So what I like to do now is I'll take my connectors, and I want to find the right length of where I should cut the individual conductors. So let's take these out first. All right, so typically whichever side is like not as nice, I usually like to put the USB-A on. So let's say this side here, right? So as this USB-A part goes inside here, it'll come in like this, right? And I kind of want to figure out how long it would be, so where this bottom part is making contact with the cable, so you're able to crimp it around the cable. So let me get a better angle there. So I'm thinking about having it about here. So I'm probably gonna cut my wire to like about this part right here. So where it makes contact in here, and I'm able to have the bottom part of it cover my cable itself. So that's about here, and I'll go ahead and snip it. Here we go. There we go. Get that out of the way. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my USB-C side. So what I'm gonna do is take part of my housing. I see the little notch here. I'll put my connector of USB-C there, and then kind of see where is a good place for me to place this on the wire. So I'll probably cut it around here. Grab that, and we'll set this off. There we go. And from there, I'm just going to expose a little of each wire. So I'm going to use my wire stripper and just take off a little part of it, just enough to solder it onto our connectors. So there we go. It might be a little messy, so make sure you have like a trash can close by, or maybe a vacuum even, because a lot of these small little strands often do make a mess. There you go. So we have our 4 exposed conductors here. It's a pretty small amount exposed, so you may not see it too well on camera here. But let's do the same thing on the other side. With the USB-A side, you can kind of expose more of it because you have a larger contact on the USB-A connector to kind of solder with, if you want to see that again. So these pads are pretty big, so you have a lot of space to work with here. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I'm going to strip off a little part of each one of these wires. Perfect. Alright, cool. So I have this stripped as well, and I have this part also stripped. And from there, we can go into actually now soldering these to the connectors. Alright, so now that we're here, let's go ahead and clean this up a little, of course. And let's move into actually soldering these to our connectors. So let's start here, and we'll grab our helping hands. So I'm going to grab that shorter end that we have here. I'll add a wiring diagram to the description below, and if I could pop it up on the screen here, I'll show you what kind of pattern I'm using here. But anyways, I will preset or like pre-move around my wires to make sure that I follow the pattern that I'm gonna do on my connector. So I typically do black, white, green, red. Typically people switch the white and green around, but I've just kind of been too accustomed to this process where it's kind of engraved in my mind. And yeah, so here we go. I have it set up, black, white, green, red. And I'm gonna put this on my helping hand here. And on the other side, I have my USB-C. This USB-C connector right here actually is pre-tinned a little, but I'll actually be tinning both sides and adding a little extra to this part as well. So I have that on. I'm gonna turn on my little air vent here and grab my solder. And from here first, I'm gonna go ahead and tin the contacts. So I'm gonna tin my wire first. Do each one. Make sure you get some good coverage here, as it will make soldering it onto the connector a lot easier afterwards. And I'm gonna add a little more here as well. Pull it off. Cool. I think that should be enough there. Let me move my mic a little here and get closer. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put it onto the connector. So let me move this. Always feel free to adjust. You want to have like a good straight angle. So make sure that you have the easiest point of contact to whatever you're going to solder on. I'm soldering at 600 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. But make sure to work fast and precisely, as the less time you have soldering, the less likely you will have problems. So be precise and make sure you do things right the first time, as you will save yourself a lot of time. Alright, let's move you here. So I'm in my like super high focus mode, because you want to make sure you do this right. There you go, got 2 down. Let me adjust this a little. Oh, there we go. There we go, and I'm gonna do my last one, which is my voltage. There we go. Cool. Alright, so I have my USB-C side done. If you want to see it there. Oops. There you go. It's all soldered on. And I feel like they have some good contacts here, so I think this should be fine. Make sure that you're not, there's no contact of any of the solder or any of the wires to each other, because that will likely cause a short. So this is the first place you can check kind of if you have any mistakes here. Alright, so let's go over to the USB-A side. So what I'm going to do again is make sure that I arrange the pattern so it's easier for me to kind of solder these on. So I'm going to do black, white, green, and red. There we go. Push if there's any of this like excess shielding, make sure to push it back as far as possible. Just make sure it's out of the way. Cool. I think it should be enough. Put my mic back up here. And let's do this one. Put you on there. And where's my A connector? Here it is. So I'm going to put this right here. And from there, I'm going to also do the same process I did on the C side and make sure to tin all of the contact points. For the USB-A side, I like filling it in quite a bit because there's like a big value to fill in. So you can add a good amount here. There we go. And we'll do the different wires too. There we go. And from there, since these are all tinned, we'll go ahead and solder this all together. And we're using the same pattern. Again, the diagram is going to be in the description below. And that's what I'm kind of following here. Alright, we have our last one that we need to solder on. And if this works out well, we'll finish our soldering. There we go. I think this is pretty good. Has some decent contacts here. If you want to see it, here it is. And from here we can actually test it out already. So I'm going to grab a USB-C keyboard. I have one behind me, I think. Good old drop CTRL. And we can test this out to make sure it works. Turn this off real quick. So I'm gonna plug this into my computer here. And from there, I can plug this in and hopefully this does work. I got loose. There we go. Plug. Yeah, we have our RGB. Seems like it's working. I usually like to Alt-Tab a few times just to make sure it's good, and it seems like it's working. So yeah, we have a working cable now, and now we can go into adding our housings. We know it's functional already, so that's the first step to make sure you have done, of course. Oops. Alright, so what we're going to do is, let's do the A side first. I like making sure that there's no more slack in the paracord, the tech flex, as when you move it around it might create more slack, so it's good to check out and make sure you smooth that out if you have any extra. But yeah, I'll go ahead and slide this on. So here's my housing. Here's the USB A side, and I do solder side up here. So I'm gonna slide this in, and it should fall right into this kind of gap right here. And I could take my nail and kind of push this white part into it to make sure it's secured inside of this housing. So I'll go ahead and do that here. And you see how it's kind of in there, and you'll see that this is pretty flush with the exterior of this USB-A end. And from here, I'll go ahead and grab my other part of the housing, and I'll just go on top of it here. And I like to make sure that all of my sleeving is inside of this connection to make sure it looks nice after I heat shrink it as well. So we can kind of clean up these hairs here, but for here, I'll just go ahead and crimp this all together. So I'll take this. And I'll go ahead and crimp these different kind of security ends here. And from there, that should be fine. You can kind of work to like make this more round, but as long as it's secure, it will serve the purpose and do its job in keeping this housing secure to your cable. And we're going to do the same thing with the USB-C side. So from here, there's a little notch. I like using the side. So if you notice on these little housings, there's a part with a hole and one without a hole. I like you doing the part without a hole first, so I can secure the part that locks in over it, because I find it easier to put on. So let's take this. I'm gonna add it right here. Let me move this sleeving a little, make sure we got any slack. There we go. Add this right here. And then we see that there's a notch here. You see the notch? I'm going to secure it right where this kind of extruded part of this connector lies. So it should fit right in that little gap. And from there, it shouldn't really move too much. And then after that, I'm just going to add this other part of the housing on top, and it should snap into place. And something you do want to check for is make sure that this doesn't move around, or if it does, not too much. As you want it to be secure as possible, especially if you're going to be using this cable. So I think this is secured here now. Make sure it snaps into place. And I'm going to go ahead and secure this connector onto the cable now. Take this, drop these prongs over it, and from there I think we're able to secure it. Same thing as the other side, you can work in like making it round as possible, but yeah, make sure it's as tight as possible and make sure it's secure as can be. So I believe we have here our connector. So now that we have both sides of these connectors now housed on, we can go ahead and heat shrink this all together. Alright, so now that we have our housed connectors here, just a quick note, make sure if you have any problems here, feel free to redo them. If you find out your connector is loose, make sure to redo it, take the time, because it basically won't be usable afterwards if it's not seated properly in the connector. So make sure you take your time there. But now we can go ahead and heat shrink these connectors down. So the heat shrinks I have here are about 1.5 inches long. I believe this is a 1/2 inch 3 to 1 shrink ratio. And that's what we use for these connectors here. So let's start with the USB-C side. What I like to do is kind of sleeve over it, the heat shrink, and then I go all the way to the tip or the edge of the USB-C housing here. And I'll go ahead and slowly use my heat gun to kind of make sure this shrinks over my connector. I kind of want to do this slow and make sure to do any adjustments as I go, just to make sure that it's going to be straight with the housing. Alright, my next adjustment. It's also important to have like even heat to make sure that it doesn't only heat down one side, because you might cause it to be uneven that way as well. Yeah, and then once you have kind of your setting in place, you can go ahead and like apply and be more aggressive with the heating. Do make sure that you don't heat the Tech-Flex too much, as this is pretty easy to melt. So just be careful, and if you're using a lighter, there's high likelihood that you may be burning your Tech-Flex. But yeah, let's go here. I'm gonna heat it all the way in. Kind of with double sleeve cables, something that I kind of look for to know that my heat shrink's in is, I don't know if you can see on camera, but you can kind of see the texture of the Tech-Flex in the heat shrink. So that's something that I use as an indicator to know that I have it Tech-Flexed. I mean, I have it that heat shrink on pretty well. So I'll do the same thing on the USB-A side. With the USB-A side, I have this little notch here. I will put my heat shrink slightly under that. So right here, about there. There's the notch, and here's my heat shrink, and from there I'll go ahead and heat gun this down. And same thing on the other side, make sure to heat it evenly, and take your time, and also make adjustments as you go to make sure it's as straight as possible. Great, and from there we have our heat shrink, the USB-A side here, and our USB-C side here. So this cable is basically finished. What I would like to do is test this again, just to make sure it's working. But other than that, you have a done cable. So yeah, if you enjoy this video, like, it's pretty easy to do. Like, I think something that I've been really trying to show people is, like, it's possible for anyone to make a cable, and it's really really cool skill to have. So even if it's not for like keyboards or anything, like, I made myself a iPhone cable, I made myself a printer cable, and there's so many applications of cables that you can make yourself if you just kind of have this basic understanding of how these cables work and how to kind of work them and solder them in. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Would greatly appreciate you if you want to see any of my other work. Make sure to check out my other videos. Also, feel free to join our Discord if you have any questions, and also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Other than that, thanks for taking the time to watch this. Have a great day and make wise choices.